Before this video starts today, I just want to say thank you to our patrons, Nanani no Nora Paidrei. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. And let's go ahead and get today's video started. Hey guys, this video is back again with another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to Patreon. Let's get one started. Today, we have Dimension Police, Zeal to Zero deck profile. Now, Zero, we all know what Zero is. Zero is like a really good budget card. He brings your opponent's Vanguard's power to 0 or unit's power to 0, and it can bring critical down to 0 if you discard a grade 3. Now, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Zeal can bring numbers into the negatives. So if you combine bringing them down to 0, followed by Zeal's minusing power, you get some pretty good negatives, like Shiroyuki level of bullshit. And honestly, this deck is really fun. I originally just was trying to make a 0 deck, and then it didn't really go well because there were too many cards that required Vanguard at being a higher power. So I eventually combined it with Zeal, and it turned out to be pretty consistent. So let's go ahead and get this deck started, shall we? First up, we have our starter and Little Hero Dracokid. 6k base, 10k Shiro, grade 0 with boost. Auto and road upon, draw a card, then if your opponent's Vanguards are grade 1 or grade, you get a quick shield, take it to your hand. Standard starter ability, nothing special about it. You get a draw, you get a quick shield. The quick shield doesn't really have a... No, there's discard fight on this deck, right? There is a place to discard the... I feel like there is a place to discard the quick shield, I'm just not thinking of it. There might not be a place to discard the quick shield, but if it's not, you get a free 5k shield and the draw, which is always helpful, so who doesn't want that? Alright, Little Hero Dracokid's the best option for this deck. I mean, in terms of just like, you know, aliens plus heroes. So, starter is Little Hero Dracokid. Trigger-wise, you run 8 crits and 4 Justice Cobalt, 4-dimensional Robo Daibattles, 4 draw PGs and Diamond Ace, 5k power, grade 0, boost, 0 shield. Draw trigger, you can choose them to have 4 sentinels in your deck, and auto guard circle when placed discard a card. Choose one of you that cannot be into the battle. So, you get a PG. If you're wondering why I don't run 12 crits, here's why. The crit sentinel has a 30k shield. Most of the time, if you play this the way I'm going to tell you to, you're going to sit on 0 for half the game. And 0, while it can bring someone's critical down to 0, being a 30k shield, just a flat 30k shield considering your base power is 0, isn't really that good. So you want that PG, especially because that PG is going to get you hand cards that you will need for later purposes. So 4 copies of Diamond Ace. And then we have 4 copies of Cosmic Hero Grandrescue, 20k power, 20k shield, 5k base, grade 0 boost, standard heal trigger, nothing special about it. If you're wondering why I don't run Heal Guardians, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't like Heal Guardians, they're very detrimental to my play strategy. If you want to run Heal Guardians, run Heal Guardians. They're not bad. In my opinion, I don't like them, but that doesn't mean they're bad. Run them if you want to. If you want to be like me, don't run them. It's up to you. So 4 copies of the heal. And then we go on to our main deck. 3 copies of Twin Order. 8k base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto rare when it boost. One of your Vanguards gets plus 10 until end of turn for each force marker that you have. So basically, you put this behind 0, or like you at least put it behind your rear guards. 0 gets the first force marker. You probably go force 1 in this case. Vanguard's at least a 10k base. Someone boosted by Twin Order. Twin Order gives another plus 10 to Vanguard, making Vanguard a bit more difficult to guard. That's what Twin Order is here for the turns that you have to sit on 0, but also for the turns like where you're going full out and you're bringing your opponent down to their lowest possible numbers. That's what Twin Order is here for. Numbers and making your units slightly better in terms of power. So 3 copies of Twin Order. 4 copies of our grade 1, or like can be classified as main grade 1 because like we have... For both grade 2s and grade 1s, we have like the Zeal lineup, then we have the 0 lineup, and you can basically go either way with them. So 4 copies of Eye of Destruction Zeal, 8k base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost, auto van rear. When placed from anywhere, look at top 7, reveal to 1 grade 2 or greater card with Zeal and its card name from among them, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck, it's a named once per turn. So, really easy, you can get the grade 2 of the ride line, you can get the grade 3 of the ride line. You just use this to get the other units of Zeal, because those are important to your plays. In my opinion, it's better to ride this over the 0 grade 1, just because like the 0 grade 1 only searches for an alternate grade 3. This, while it does search for only the Zeal half, and you're not going to use all of the Zeal half really early on, you can combine it with the grade 2 in order to make your opponent in order to make it a lot easier to hit them on your grade 2 turn. So Zeal's have 4 copies for that. And then the last grade 1, which is the quote-unquote main grade 1 of the ride line, but once more, in my opinion, this is better grade 1. Eternity Chaser, 8k base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto when rode upon, discard a card, reveal up to 1 grade 3 normal unit in your hand. If you did, search your deck for up to 1 grade 3 with a different name, reveal it, add it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. So, you're right on top of this with the grade 0, you discard a card, you show them a grade 3 in your hand, and then you get another grade 3 to your hand. So, discard a card, get a grade 3, which is Interesting skill. Downside is you have to have a grade 3 to begin with, so if you don't have a grade 3, this is effectively useless, but it's still pretty nice. And it has to be a normal unit, so you can't even use Hero Guardians with this. And auto back or rear guard. When your opponent's rear guard attacks, if that unit's power is 25k or less, soul blast 1 retire, choose one of your units in it to end a battle cannot be hit. So count the power as boost as well, which is the worst part about this, because if I didn't count the boost, it would be a lot easier to pull off. But hey, we basically get a free PG, or not a free PG, like it has to be on board, it has to die, and you have to Soul Blast one, but the deck doesn't use up too much Soul Blast, and it's a PG against a rear guard attack that isn't too big, so like if you already used up Zero's guarding capabilities of like dropping someone's crit to 0, you can use it to defend yourself if they're swinging for like a number only 25. Unfortunately, it is under 25, which is for some reason the number they chose. I feel like that's really easy to hit. If it was 20, I mean, if it was like 28, I could see it, but 25 is really easy to hit for a lot of decks, so I give this thing 4. It's still good because it's a possible PG, but it's more or less outclassed by this thing. On to grade 2s. 3 copies of Platinum Ace, grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Continuous Vanguard during your turn, it gets +5, and auto rear once per turn when it attacks if your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater with 30k or greater power, Soul Blast 1, it gets +10k and a crit for the turn. Okay, here's what you do with this. The entire point of this deck is to sit on 0 for like 2 grade 3 turns, ride Zeal on the 3rd grade 3 turn or 2nd grade 3 turn if you have to, bring your opponent into possibly negatives, if you can bring them into the negatives that is, or at least bring them to 0, and then proceed to rush them with big numbers. Platinum Ace was so helpful during that game, or when I first tested this deck out, where I brought them into the negatives because I thought you could do it, and I'm still not sure about it, but I'm pretty sure you can. I brought them to like -20. I got a lot of numbers on my Vanguard, put a critical trigger on my Vanguard even though it was PG. I mean, I put the critical somewhere else, but I put the critical trigger power on my Vanguard, swung with Vanguard, because I was at 33, now I could swing with this thing and still get the +10k and a crit, and my other Vanguard had extra crit on it, and they were at 4 damage. So, all around, Platinum Ace is really good. Granted, all this like relies on, you know, your opponent being able to go into the negatives, but if you can, this thing abuses the crap out of it. And if they can't, well, it's still pretty good because it hits for pretty big numbers. They wouldn't have survived because they were still too low to survive, but it's still a pretty good card nonetheless. And continues, so, you know, good grade 2 target if you want to use it, and a possible 20k double extra critical. You're not going to use it in the early game, though. You're going to use it when you get to Zeal. So 3 copies. 4 copies of Devourer of Planets Zeal, once more, just like the grade 1. You might want to ride this over the other grade 2, the one from 0, but I can see if you want to ride the grade 2 from 0 over this. So 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept, active Vanguard or rear guard, once per turn, counterblast one of the rest 2 rear guards, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, it loses 5k for the turn, and if I have Destruction Zeals in your soul, draw a card. So basically, you want to preferably ride this just so you get the extra draw from that skill, but if you have to ride this, not the end of the world, and really easy to pull off. This deck does use up a bit of counterblast, so that might be a problem, and you have to rest 2 rear guards for it, but making it harder for them to guard on grade 2 turn and making it easier for you to rush them is pretty nice. And auto when rode upon by any grade 3, not just Zeal, but any grade 3, choose an opponent's Vanguard and it loses 5k for the turn. So their power goes to like, if they're at grade 2, they go to 5k, if they're at grade 3, they go to between 7 and 8, or if you're in the case of Dungaree, 12, which is the deck I played this against, by the way, and won, because I know what I'm doing. Zeal is honestly pretty good, nets you the power advantage in the early game, and can possibly get you a hand. And the good news is this thing can work on Van or Rear for that draw, as long as the Larva is in the soul. So, I mean, as long as Eye is in the soul. So 4 copies of this thing, because really good grade 2. And then we have the so-and-so grade 2 that I am debating if it has worth on it or not, which is Endless Float. Endless Float is a questionable grade 2 in my book, but it's an okay grade 2, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto when it's rode upon, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets +10k for the turn, and then discard 1, call it to rear. So you could possibly lose the soul card for discard, but you get an extra unit, and your Vanguard's at least a +10 on it, so if you're on 0 regular, it gets +10, so it's a 10k base, and if you're on Zeal, if you have a force gift on, it's 20k, and then if you're on Zeal, the boy becomes a 23, assuming that you put force gifts on at 33, so Endless Float can be helpful, but then its other skill is auto rear guard. When this unit attacks, if you're at grade 3 was placed during the turn, this unit gets +5k until end of battle. At the end of the battle, you may retire it and draw a card. So, downside is to this, you have to ride a grade 3 for all of that ability to go off. Even if you're not going to retire, even if you just want to retire it, you have to ride a grade 3 for it. So that's kind of like the detrimental part, because if you don't have it, it's not useful, but it can still be useful in the sense that, you know, it makes your first grade 3 turn really good, especially like if you ride 0 to bring their numbers down and you're rushing them. But I still prefer to ride this, but if you need to ride this, ride it, because it's not that bad as for ride. So 4 copies. Then we hit our grade 3s. 3 copies of Black-clad top tier Deity, Black, 12k, 13k base, grade 3 twin drive force gift. Active Vanguard once per turn, counterbalance 1 and 3 of your units in the front row gets plus 10 for the turn. So automatically this becomes a 23. Okay, that's really good, really, like immediately, and then all of your other rear guards at least are hitting for either 18s or the 20s, unless you just called a bunch of triggers, so that's really good. And auto van, at the end of the battle they attacked, look at top 7, reveal to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck, and if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, discard 2, write at a grade 3 not named Bradblack from your hand or as stand, and then you get plus 10 and minus 1 drive for the turn. So this is here in case like you have to ride this, and you kind of want to search a 0 for it, because you never want to ride Zeal during the battle phase unless you have to, because 0 is the best one for like setup and stalling through your opponent's turn. So you do this to look at your deck for 0. Maybe you have 0 in hand, you just want to get more force gifts that turn. You get 0, you ride, you still get only 1 drive check, but at the same time 0 is at least hitting for 20 because presumably you put a force gift on it, and the plus 10 is always helpful, and it just adds for numbers. So and you can put their Vanguard to 0. So honestly, it's really good. Bradblack, I like this card, and I give it a 3 of because it can be helpful in this deck. Next up, we have our main, or not our main grade 3, I mean, we could classify it as the main grade 3. Galactic Beast Zeal, grade 3, twin drive force gift, 13k base, auto Vanguard, rear guard, when this card is placed from hand, look at the top card of your deck, call it to rear guard. So, unlike Ease Route from Keter, you have to call the card that you see. And if it's on Van, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and loses 5k for the turn for each marker on your opponent's circles. It's really nice that he can get you a rear guard, especially for second skill, which we're going to go over in a second. And, I mean, he also gives you rest fodder for this thing. But then also he can minus your opponent's Vanguard for 5k for each of their gift markers. So really easy to bring them into like the 7ks or 8ks. And if you combine it with 0, who is an road upon make your opponent's Vanguard 0, and you can bring them into negatives, they're going to negatives from this. So that's really good. And then active Vanguard once per turn, counter plus 1, put 1 or more of your rear guards into your soul, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards until end of turn, it gets minus 10k, and if your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, and Devourer plants Zeals in your soul, it gets plus 1 drive for every 2 cards planted to soul for this cost. So downside is it's not an on-swing, but then again, it's kind of better that it's not an on-swing, because then you can choose if you're going to call more stuff or not. You can put a grand total of like 4 rear guards to soul, boy gets 2 extra drives, now he's swinging for quad drive, they lose 10, once more, they go into negatives. This is a negative like 20, because that's what I hit negative 20, and you get extra drives. So really nice, clears up your board, does a thing, and it's only for the cost of 1 counterblast. 4 copies, amazing grade 3. And then we have 4 copies of our last card in the deck, and our main grade 3 considerably, Original Saver 0, the best thing to sit on. Like, they genuinely, I question him greatly for making this, I question them greatly for making this, but I do love its skill, and it's a really good card to sit on, and a good budget card. Grade 3 twin drive force gift, 0 power. The thing that I question the most, they really wanted to use the word 0. They like took it a step farther than the original, and auto when it's placed on, when it attacks, when this unit on Van attacks, or when it's rode upon, Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1, the only card in this deck that's Soul Blast, and besides Platinum Ace, of course, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's units, and his power becomes 0 for the turn. You can put the Vanguard at 0, which we most likely will do all the time. You can put your opponent's rear guard at 0, that's going to be pesky. All around, pretty good. You get a draw. Only downside is the Counter Blast and the Soul Blast, but that's not really hard to pay considering this thing just nets you free soul. And auto Van, once per turn, when this unit is attacked by anything, if it be by Vanguard or rear guard, discard a grade 3 from your hand, the downside to this, and until end of battle, the attacking unit's critical becomes 0. So basically a PG. Except better, because it doesn't reduce the critical by any amount, it just changes it to 0. So, I mean, technically it's an increase and decrease, but it doesn't really, like, decrease it by 1 or 2, it brings it to 0, which is honestly really good. Definitely makes it a lot easier to guard things. I mean, granted, if like they're attacking with their Vanguard and they pull crit during their drive check, of course it's going to bump their critical back up. But all around, 0 is still a pretty good card for this. Nice thing to sit on. My only thing about it is, I wish it wasn't a once per turn, or I wish it was a different cost. Like, it could have been once per turn, discard anything, the critical becomes 0, or not once per turn, but you still have to discard a grade 3. Like, that would have been better, because it allows you to use it more in a turn, or like be more consistent with it. But either way, 0 is still an amazing grade 3, and I like it for it. 4 copies. This thing is definitely something that you need to be smart about using. And then I guess we run 8 Force 2, 8 Force 1s, because you're going to ride a decent amount of times in this deck. Imaginary Gift Force 1, when acquired, put it on Vanguard or Rear Guard, and the unit on the circle gets plus 10 during your turn. It can be placed on multiple circles. It can be placed on the same circle multiple times, and it will stack. So like 1 gives you 10, obviously, 3 gives you 30, 5 gives you 50, etc., etc. All around, you don't really put that many on the Vanguard. Like, how I do is I go 1 to Vanguard, because you want to ride 0 first, and then you put 1 on the other rear guards. But if you're going to ride 0 again, you put it again on the Vanguard so it can actually hit more. So that's how I do it. And then force 2, the one you're least likely to use, is when it's required, put it on Vanguard or Rearguard. The original critical of the unit becomes 2. It does not stack, so you can't just put 2 of them on the same circle and it gets plus 2 crits because it says the original critical becomes 2. So you have to put them on different circles. You're not going to run this one because you are going to ride a good number of times and you want to bring your opponent down to the lowest number possible and be able to swing with big numbers, because the extra crits won't really matter if this thing is still swinging like for 0 power and they can just 20k guard it for a no pass, or like 25k guard for a no pass. So you want the force 1 to add numbers. If you think you're going to need the force 2 for like easily killing them quickly, go for force 2, but I think force 1 is going to work better in this deck. And then we have our quick shield, which is when one of your attacks is plus 5k for the battle. You know, standard quick shield. Like, there's nothing in this deck that really discards. I mean, there's the ride line for 0 over here that can discard, I guess. So that's an option if you really want to. But most of the time, you're just going to use that as the discard. I mean, but it's considering like the ride line requires you to ride them, you're probably going to use this as a 5k shield. So it's good. I wish it was counted as a grade 3, so you can abuse the crap out of this with 0, but it's still a pretty good card. We run it at 1 because there's only one way to get a quick shield. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun playing. Like, when I first saw 0, I thought it would be very boring. I didn't think it would be exciting at all. It is actually pretty exciting. It's in a nice grade 3 for budget build. It adds, like, a lot of extra strategy to the game, but, like, not enough strategy to where it's boring, but enough strategy to where, like, it's fun to see it go off. And it's amazing to play, and I love it. So I might even try picking this up. Like, I really like its art, and I like all the cards in here. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join the Patreon, join Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.